What you're going to see here today is a presentation that is associated with the 2012 Water and Growth Community Consultation. Steve Hanhart with the Town of Okotoks and Marley Onas with the Town of Okotoks will make the presentation. We're going to begin our presentation around the 1998 Legacy Plan. It was the overall plan for our community based on a limited growth model, and a key factor in developing that growth model was the carrying capacity of the Sheep River and the water supply that is available on the Sheep River. Part of that plan established a permanent growth boundary for Okotoks, resulting in a population growth limit of about 35,000 people. A key premise of the plan is that municipalities can control their own destiny. There were several implementation tools that were put into place for this plan. First was the Legacy Plan, or the Municipal Development Plan for Okotoks. All other statutory plans and the land use bylaw for Okotoks align with the municipal plan. Implementation is also reliant on what is called the Intermunicipal Development Plan, an agreement between the MD of Foothills and the Town of Okotoks. And it was adopted at the same time as the Legacy Plan and is a 20-year plan. There are a whole series of successes that have come forward under the Legacy Plan. Here are a couple that are part of this presentation. There are, of course, many more. And Okotoks is an award-winning community with respect to its planning and development. We saw around 2003 a number of emerging trends that have affected Okotoks' growth plan. We saw persistent, significant growth in the Calgary region. That wasn't isolated to Okotoks. We saw that throughout the region. Of course, Okotoks was one of the communities that grew rapidly during this period. And between 2001 and 2006, Okotoks' growth rate was 46% increase. Another emerging trend was the Calgary Regional Partnership and their work on a new metropolitan plan for the region. And that plan work projected long-term population for Okotoks and area over a 50-year period of approximately 60,000 people. Another trend that emerged was the Municipal District of Foothills, our neighbor, and their desire to concentrate growth near existing urban centers. That is a different growth model than the MD of Foothills was pursuing in 1998. And they were also pursuing higher density development patterns than were traditionally the case in the MD of Foothills. And both of these factors resulted in mounting pressure for growth on the boundaries of the Town of Okotoks. In response to these emerging trends, Council initiated a public consultation in late 2008. It's called the Sustainable Okotoks Where To From Here initiative, and it concluded in 2009. Other stakeholder consultation around these emerging trends included the Joint Planning Agreement, which was adopted in January of 2010. That is a joint agreement between the MD of Foothills and the Town of Okotoks with respect to border development or boundary development. We also undertook what was called the MetroQuest initiative in June of 2010. We also negotiated a cost of services agreement between the Town of Okotoks and Foothills in 2011, and we also undertook what was called the Water and Growth Speaker Series through 2011.
I'm going to go through a couple of the growth scenarios as it pertains to the decisions we need to make around water. Essentially, there's two scenarios we're looking at. A limited growth scenario where we would grow to a population of approximately 35,000. That would take us out to where our current borders are right now. The continuous growth scenario, we could grow to a population of about 60,000. That's the number predicted in the Calgary Regional Plan for the next 60 years for this region. So under the limited growth scenario, there's three options that fall under potential water sources. Currently, we have licensed water capacity for approximately 25 to 30,000 people. We need an additional 1,000 acre feet if we're to reach a population of 35,000. There's a conjunctive water management strategy that we don't look at as a potential source of water, but it is a strategy that should be implemented by the town, whether we're looking at a limited growth strategy or an unlimited growth strategy. And I'm just going to speak to the conjunctive water management strategy. Basically what this is, it's various watershed management techniques that can be used to improve flows in the watershed. The problem with a conjunctive water management strategy is that it doesn't provide more water to the town in the short period. Currently, the provincial policies will prohibit any new licenses in the South Saskatchewan watershed. But what the conjunctive water management strategy could do is, in the long term, it could provide the necessary work to justify new water licenses or assist in risk management of water supply. But it is a long-term potential solution. The first of the solutions that will result in more water, first one is being processed water recovery. We can recover up to 10% of the water used in the water treatment process through upgrades to the water treatment plant. We can potentially gain 200 to 300 acre feet of water through plant upgrades. The second potential source of water is water license transfers. Transfers is the government of Alberta's current solution for acquiring new water. Our town has been pursuing license transfers since 2009, and we continue to pursue transfer opportunities. We have had, since 2009, approximately 229 acre feet transferred to the town. The water market for water license transfers is just developing. Costs of the transfers that we've done to date are ranging in from $5,000 to $7,500 an acre foot. Another approach to obtaining new water is to seek return flow credits from the province. The town currently returns 80% of its water back into the Sheep River in the form of high quality treated effluent. The town has been seeking recognition and credit from the province for the last decade for the water that we return. And discussion with the province in this regard is still ongoing. We're continuing the dialogue with the province in the hope that they will provide a credit for the water that we are returning. So under the limited growth scenario, we don't have enough water right now to reach our build-out population. As a result, the town has adopted a water queuing policy whereby land developers will move into a queue for the ability to subdivide land subject to water availability. So currently any subdivision that has been approved, there is enough water to service that subdivision, and there's a pot of water that is available for new subdivision applications on a first come first served basis, but it is limited, and we will need additional water beyond that to service new subdivisions to our ultimate boundaries. So we're going to turn to a continuous growth scenario and what it means in terms of our water requirements. At the end of the day, we'll need substantially more water if we're going to grow under a continuous growth scenario. We're suggesting that we would still undertake conjunctive water management strategies and feasibility studies under this scenario, again in the hope that at some point it will provide a tool for watershed management, and it could provide good justification for asking for more water under different circumstances. Really what it boils down to under potential water sources under a continuous growth scenario, we'd be looking at either a treated water pipeline from the City of Calgary or a new raw water intake off of the Bow River. The City of Calgary Council has approved providing regional servicing to municipalities that are aligned with the Calgary Metropolitan Plan. Calgary currently supplies treated water to and accepts sewage effluent from outlying regional communities such as Airdrie, Strathmore, Chestermere, and Cochrane. Calgary has sufficient water licenses to share with municipalities. One of the things that makes the Bow River as a source of water attractive is the fact that flows in the Bow are highly managed by reservoirs, and the Calgary Regional Partnership believes the Bow is a long-term, reliable, and sustainable source for water. The treated water pipeline from Calgary and regional servicing strategies in general seem to receive the most support by the province of Alberta. A raw water intake off of the Bow River is a second option if we were to enter into a continuous growth scenario. This option has been examined by the Calgary Regional Partnership Servicing Committee, and it ranked lower than the Calgary pipeline option based on a triple bottom line analysis, whereby they looked at cost, they looked at environmental factors and operational factors. The raw water intake would require water license transfers, and the City of Calgary have indicated that they would be happy to supply treated water, but they would not, at this point, they would not entertain considering any water license transfers. So new water licenses would be required if there was an intake constructed off of the Bow River. And this would require some fairly major capital investment for a new raw water intake. So just a couple of comments on principles of who pays. Under a limited growth scenario, which is essentially the scenario we are under right now, developers are required to pay for water infrastructure which is required due to growth through off-site levies and off-site levy bylaws. Basically, the process is any new infrastructure, the degree of benefit is examined, and if it benefits development, then development would pay according to the benefit they receive. And currently, developers are paying a fee towards water acquisition for license transfers. Under a continuous growth scenario, for major capital expenditures, again, it is reasonable to expect a high level of provincial support. Based on past practices, the province has contributed up to 90% of the capital cost for regional servicing. Again, for major infrastructure, if it benefits new development will pay their proportionate share of that benefit. And again, this would be administered through the off-site levies and off-site levy bylaw.
Thank you, Marley. So where are we today? Relationship between Foothills and the town regarding planning matters is unsettled due to disagreement on planning frameworks for land around Okotoks. An example would be the approval by the MD of Foothills of urban development adjacent to town borders. And there are several like developments that other landowners are contemplating near Okotoks. There are potential impacts of some forms of foothills development on the town's water supply, because some of these proposals are reliant on groundwater, and groundwater may be impacting the town's water supply. There is uncertainty regarding whether Okotoks will in fact limit its growth, particularly with the MD of Foothills. And also we have a notice of motion for annexation that was introduced at Okotoks Council on March 12, 2012. Now that item was not debated, but postponed to June 25th, 2012. However, it is a notice of motion that will be considered in the near future by the town of Okotoks. Okotoks is once again at a crossroads, similar to the one in 1998. However, many of the circumstances today are quite different. The provincial policy with respect to water has changed dramatically. There is a moratorium on new water licenses from the Bow Basin. There's an emerging water market where water licensing is being purchased. There are policies and funding initiatives at the provincial level that lean towards regional systems as opposed to local solutions. Okotoks' current water supply is not sufficient to support growth much beyond 27,000 people. And Okotoks is rapidly closing in on build-out of the legacy plan. Okotoks Development abuts the shared boundary between Foothills and Okotoks. In fact, approximately 72% of the circumference of Okotoks has development in Okotoks reaching those boundaries. The Calgary Metropolitan Plan indicates Okotoks, an area, could grow to a population well in excess of the legacy plan. Foothills growth aspirations have changed dramatically since 1998. And finally, the Intermunicipal Development Plan, a key planning tool for implementation of the legacy plan, no longer appears to meet the needs of either Foothills or the town of Okotoks. So we're going to take a look now at what the choices for growth might look like from a conceptual sketch point of view. We're going to take a look at the limited growth model and a continuous growth scenario and see how those might play out on the landscape over the next 50 years or so. So here you'll see on the video a map of Okotoks. The red lines are the road network for Okotoks, and the black line represents the long-term permanent growth boundary that was established through the 1998 Legacy Plan. The boundary here and the road network. You'll see now on the slide the Sheep River showing up, and this slide is indicating the likely water supplies for a limited growth model. Likely would require a sub-regional solution to accommodate surrounding MD growth pressure and potentially supplying water to Okotoks if Okotoks cannot find a local solution over the next number of years. There certainly is potential for a local solution under this growth scenario. This slide shows how Okotoks would grow out over the next number of years. Okotoks was planned and would be developed as a complete, sustainable, connected, mixed-use community where one could live, work, and play. And the population, the resulting population, would be somewhere between 30 and 35,000 people. This slide represents what we see as the growth pressure that is going to occur over the next number of years based on recent experience and also the MD's desire to grow closer to Okotoks and also at higher densities. We believe that pressure would be significant, as it is now, into the future as well. And in the long term, the MD of Foothills would continue to accommodate that growth pressure and concentrate growth in various forms right beside Okotoks, resulting in a significant rural population close to Okotoks. And that's represented by the pink areas around Okotoks. We'll turn now to the continuous growth scenario. We start with the current town boundary for Okotoks on a similar map to the one that we just looked at. This next slide shows potential Okotoks annexation corridors. Now, these are just potential annexation corridors, and when a community looks at annexation, they look at all directions, and they, through comprehensive infrastructure studies, look at which directions are the most cost-effective for growth, long-term growth. This process is a process that takes some time and involves negotiation with both the landowners that are affected by the annexation and, of course, our rural neighbors, the MD of Foothills. With respect to water, it would likely require a pipeline from Calgary, as Marley has pointed out, to support continuous long-term growth. There may be some interim solutions, but they would be a sub-regional supply, potentially from a neighboring municipality, to sustain and accommodate this type of growth. This next slide shows how Okotoks might grow through annexation into the future. Okotoks, certainly under this scenario, could continue to strive to be a complete, sustainable, connected, mixed-use community, growing continuously into the future through annexation. So a key difference would be that the community would grow to a larger population threshold than the current 35,000. And also a key difference would be that there likely would be a need to connect to Calgary treated water supply. This growth scenario would not completely mitigate the growth pressure from the MD of Foothills near the town of Okotoks borders. This model would accommodate the bulk of regional and sub-regional growth in Okotoks. However, some growth would continue to occur near Okotoks within the MD of Foothills under this growth scenario. So this final slide with respect to these growth scenarios shows some more modest growth within the MD of Foothills, represented in the pink shaded color. So that's the conclusion of our presentation to you. And the question before the community is, how do you envision the future of our community? Thank you.